It's strange. We live in this time where information is just everywhere,
Yeah.
constantly bombarding us from all sides.
Yes.
But there's this feeling that something's not quite right,
Yeah.
a sense of unease that many are struggling to even articulate. It's almost as if
Right.
we're searching for a way to make sense of the chaos, to find some order in a world that feels increasingly unpredictable.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is how many people are turning to conspiracy theories
Oh, yeah.
as a way to explain these feelings. But what
Sure.
if there's another way that we can kind of view this
Yeah.
societal unease?
Enter Matthias Desmet
Exactly.
and his work on mass formation.
Yes.
In his book, The Psychology of Totalitarianism, he offers this framework for understanding how seemingly rational societies can drift towards irrational behavior, almost like a collective trance. It's a bit unsettling, to be honest,
It is.
but also strangely illuminating.
Yeah. And that's precisely what we're doing today. Kind of your shortcut to understanding Desmet's ideas.
Exactly.
We'll unpack his theory, explore the psychological mechanisms at play, and discuss how you, as an individual, can maintain independent thinking amidst all of this.
Yeah, because let's be real, critical thinking more important than ever.
Yeah.
It's like we're all standing at a crossroads.
Yeah.
And the choices we make now, both individually and collectively,
Mhm.
are going to shape the course of our future.
Absolutely. And Desmet, he begins by highlighting the shift in scientific thought, a move away from open-mindedness towards what he calls mechanistic thinking.
Okay.
It's a reliance on rigid systems, data,
Right.
often at the expense of intuition and human connection.
He points to the replication crisis in science as evidence.
Yeah.
It's disturbing to think that such a large percentage of scientific studies might have questionable conclusions. It makes you wonder what we can truly trust these days.
Right. Think about the thalidomide and DES scandals.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
These were marketed as scientific breakthroughs, yet they had devastating consequences. Thalidomide, a sleep aid, caused severe birth defects, and DES, prescribed to prevent miscarriages, led to long-term health problems across generations.
Those examples are just heartbreaking reminders that scientific pronouncements shouldn't be blindly accepted.
Exactly, and Desmet uses them to underscore the importance of critical evaluation.
Yeah.
Even when faced with seemingly authoritative claims, we must be willing to ask questions, seek diverse perspectives, and not simply follow the dominant narrative.
It's a call for intellectual humility, for acknowledging that even the most rigorous scientific methods can have blind spots.
Right, and this ties into Desmet's argument about our society's obsession with control.
Mhm.
It's this belief that we can and should manage every aspect of our lives and the world around us, from health and finances to even the climate.
But isn't some level of structure and organization necessary for society to function? I mean, we can't just have chaos, right?
Yeah. Of course. Of course structure is essential, but Desmet, what he argues is that this desire for control stems from a deeper fear, a fear of uncertainty and a diminishing tolerance for risk. It's the explosion of insurance policies for everything, even heartbreak. We're so terrified of the unknown that we're willing to pay a premium just to avoid it.
It's almost comical how we try to insure ourselves against every possible eventuality.
I know.
Yet, paradoxically, the more we try to control, the more chaotic and unpredictable the world seems to become.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
This societal anxiety, combined with a decrease in genuine human connection,
Yeah.
creates the breeding ground for what Desmet calls the 4 conditions of mass formation.
Okay, I'm all ears. These conditions sound fascinating. Can you elaborate on how they work together to make a society ripe for this phenomenon?
Absolutely. So the first condition is widespread social isolation. We're increasingly connected digitally, but physically and emotionally isolated. Loneliness is on the rise, genuine community spaces are dwindling, and we're replacing real-life interactions with curated online personas.
It's like we're trading depth for breadth, sacrificing meaningful connections for a multitude of superficial ones.
Yeah, and this lack of true connection
Right.
leads to the second condition, a lack of meaning in life.
Okay.
People are struggling to find purpose, to feel like their existence has value beyond mere productivity.
Desmet uses the example of bullshit jobs, where individuals are stuck in these meaningless tasks that offer no sense of accomplishment or contribution.
Exactly.
He talks about Kurt, an IT subcontractor who drives for hours just to move a computer 2 doors down.
Exactly. These bullshit jobs further fuel this feeling of emptiness and disconnection.
It's almost tragicomic,
It is.
but it highlights a real problem. When your daily work feels meaningless, it's easy to feel disillusioned and lost.
Absolutely. And this combination of isolation and lack of meaning breeds the third condition, free-floating anxiety and aggression.
Okay.
When people are disconnected and they lack purpose, they become more susceptible to anxiety, irritability, and even hostility.
We see this playing out everywhere, don't we? The rise of road rage, the vitriol on social media, the increasing polarization of political discourse. It's like we're all on edge, ready to snap at the slightest provocation.
Exactly. And this underlying tension, the simmering discontent, creates the fourth and final condition, widespread dissatisfaction with the status quo.
Okay.
When a large portion of the population feels isolated, meaningless, and anxious,
Right.
they become hungry for change, for something to alleviate their unease. Welcome back. Last time we were discussing how this convergence of social isolation, lack of meaning, free-floating anxiety, and widespread discontent kind of creates this fertile ground for what Desmet calls mass formation.
Yeah, it paints a rather bleak picture, doesn't it? This
Yeah.
idea that these underlying societal conditions can make us vulnerable to manipulation, to blindly following a narrative, even if it's not in our best interest.
But remember, understanding these mechanisms is the first step towards empowering ourselves.
Right.
Knowledge is our most potent tool for resistance.
So where do we go from here? If we're living in a society primed for mass formation, how can we, as individuals, kind of navigate this landscape without falling prey to its influence?
Well, Desmet's work offers some valuable insights. He argues that mass formation thrives on silencing dissenting voices. The more people that kind of buy into the narrative, the less tolerance they have for alternative perspectives.
Right.
This creates this dangerous cycle where the illusion of consensus becomes self-reinforcing, making it increasingly difficult to break free.
It's like being trapped in an echo chamber, where everyone's repeating the same ideas and any deviation is met with hostility or dismissal.
Exactly.
It's a recipe for intellectual stagnation, isn't it?
Precisely. And that's why Desmet, he emphasizes the crucial role of what he calls the third group. These are the individuals who remain unhypnotized by the dominant narrative and actively resist it. They are the ones who dare to ask uncomfortable questions, point out inconsistencies, and offer alternative interpretations, even when faced with ridicule or rejection.
They're like the guardians of critical thinking, the ones who keep the flame of reason burning, even when it's threatened with being extinguished by the winds of conformity.
Their role is vital because they prevent mass formation from solidifying into something more sinister, something akin to totalitarianism.
Right.
They remind us that there are always multiple ways of seeing the world, even when a single narrative seems to dominate the discourse.
But it must take immense courage to stand against the tide, especially when it feels like everyone else is swept up in the current. How can one person even hope to make a difference when faced with such overwhelming pressure to conform?
It's true, going against the grain can be isolating. But Desmet reminds us that even within a crowd caught in the grip of mass formation, there are always individuals who are starting to doubt, who are sensing that something isn't quite right.
Right.
When they hear a dissenting voice, it can be a lifeline, a confirmation that they're not alone in their skepticism.
So it's not necessarily about convincing the entire crowd, but about planting seeds of doubt,
Exactly.
about offering an alternative perspective that might resonate with those who are already questioning the dominant narrative.
Right.
It's about creating cracks in the facade of consensus, allowing for light to seep through.
Now, it's crucial to distinguish between mass formation and what we commonly refer to as conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
You know, both might offer these simplified explanations for complex events, but Desmet argues that mass formation isn't necessarily orchestrated by a small, powerful group.
Okay.
It's more like a self-organizing system, fueled by those underlying societal conditions we discussed earlier.
So it's not about shadowy figures pulling the strings, but rather about a collective psychological vulnerability that can be exploited by a compelling narrative,
Yeah.
regardless of its origin or accuracy.
Exactly.
It's a subtle but crucial distinction.
Precisely. And Desmet, he points to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion as an example.
Right.
This fabricated text, purporting to outline a Jewish plan for global domination, gained traction because it tapped into pre-existing societal anxieties and prejudices. Focusing solely on who might have created or propagated such a document distracts us from understanding why it resonated so powerfully with certain segments of the population.
It's about recognizing that the seeds in manipulation often find fertile ground in our own psychological and social landscapes. It's about understanding the why, rather than obsessing over the who.
Yeah, exactly. And this leads us to another critical insight from Desmet's work. Simply debunking a particular narrative or exposing its flaws isn't enough to counter mass formation.
Right.
We need to address those underlying conditions that make us susceptible in the first place. We need to cultivate a society that fosters genuine connection, meaningful purpose, and a healthy tolerance for uncertainty.
So it's about creating a social ecosystem where mass formation is less likely to take root, where critical thinking and open dialogue are valued, and where individuals feel empowered to express their unique perspectives without fear of reprisal. It's a tall order, but it seems essential if we want to build a future where individual autonomy and collective well-being can coexist.
Indeed. And that's precisely what we'll delve into in the final part of our deep dive. How can we, as individuals, cultivate this kind of resilience? What concrete steps can we take to strengthen our independent thinking and contribute to a more conscious and connected world?
Stay tuned, folks, for the most empowering part of our exploration. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, ready to tackle the big question. How do we cultivate resilience in a world where mass formation seems to be lurking around every corner? Knowing about the problem is one thing, but what practical steps can we take to protect ourselves and maybe even help others do the same?
Well, this is where Desmet's work takes a really intriguing turn, moving beyond the social and political into the realm of consciousness itself. He challenges the prevailing materialistic view, that our thoughts and feelings are simply byproducts of brain chemistry.
That sounds pretty radical. Most of us assume our minds are just a product of our physical brains. What's Desmet's alternative?
He proposes that consciousness is this fundamental force in the universe, capable of shaping not just our individual realities, but also the fabric of society. It's a bold idea with some really fascinating implications for how we understand ourselves and our potential.
So instead of our thoughts being merely reactions to the world, they actually have the power to influence and shape the world around us.
Precisely. Desmet draws on examples from quantum mechanics and the placebo effect to support this view. He cites cases where individuals with minimal brain tissue have lived remarkably normal lives, suggesting that consciousness might not be entirely dependent on the physical structure of the brain.
That's certainly a different way of looking at things. I've always thought of consciousness as being inextricably linked to the brain. This makes you wonder about the true nature of the mind and its capabilities.
He also highlights the power of belief to influence physical healing. Think about the placebo effect.
Yeah.
People recovering from illnesses simply because they believe in the effectiveness of a treatment, even if that treatment is a sugar pill. It points to the profound influence our beliefs can have on our physical well-being.
That's a fascinating point. It suggests that our minds aren't just passive observers, but active participants in shaping our reality.
Exactly. And this is where things get really empowering. If consciousness is this fundamental force, then cultivating independent thinking isn't just about protecting ourselves from manipulation. It's about actively shaping a more conscious and connected world. It's about recognizing that our thoughts and beliefs have the power to create change.
So it's not just about defense, it's about going on the offense. We're not just resisting the negative, but actively creating something positive. I like that.
Exactly. And Desmet, he encourages us to cultivate what he calls full speech. This is a way of communicating that goes beyond simply conveying information. It's about expressing ourselves authentically, transmitting our unique individuality, our essence as human beings. It's about connecting with others on a deeper level.
It's like sharing not just our words, but our souls. It sounds like a powerful antidote to the isolation and superficiality that seems so prevalent these days.
Exactly. Desmet argues that full speech is essential for forming genuine connections and breaking down the barriers of isolation that fuel mass formation. It's about speaking our truth, even if it's messy, even if it's unpopular, because that act of authentic expression has the power to awaken something in others. It can spark recognition, connection, and understanding.
This reminds me of that quote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." It's through our vulnerabilities, our authentic selves, that we truly connect with others.
Desmet concludes his work with a thought-provoking observation. Every child, at some point, confronts the uncertainty of language and meaning. They realize that words don't always have clear-cut answers. At that moment, they have a choice: to cling to the need for certainty and control, or embrace the mystery and choose the path of creativity and connection.
It's like we're all going through this collective growing up process.
Right.
We're confronting the limitations of our current narratives and choosing whether to double down on control or to embrace the unknown, to step into a world where uncertainty is not something to be feared, but a source of possibility.
And the choices we make, individually and collectively, will determine the kind of society we create. Do we want a world ruled by fear and control where conformity reigns supreme? Or do we choose a world where connection and creativity flourish, where diversity is celebrated, and where individual expression is honored?
That's a powerful question to leave us with. This deep dive has taken us on quite a journey into the depths of human psychology, the dynamics of societal control, and the potential of consciousness itself. We've explored how mass formation operates, the conditions that make it possible, and the role of the individual in resisting its pull.
Remember, you have a powerful voice. Your choices matter. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep connecting. Cultivate your independent thinking and embrace the power of full speech to create a more conscious and connected world.
And that, my friends, is a wrap on our deep dive into the world of Matthias Desmet and mass formation. We hope this exploration has given you some valuable insights and tools to navigate these complex times. Until next time, keep diving deep.